Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it? You already know. Like a motherfucking smack addict. Bye. And in Menudo style in direct fashion, we're going to get straight into the content of the day. But before we do, let's hit that like and subscribe button. Ding! Put your notification bell on all. So that way you're directing the direction of the dope content I'm kicking. And I highly appreciate all the support, man. We're going up on this channel, and it's all because of you. And for that, I can say I'm very humbled, and I'm so appreciative. So I was asked a question a while back, man, about a certain individual. Actually, I was asked a question about a lot of different individuals, like who I've been locked up with. I always constantly get asked, have you been locked up with anybody famous or anybody well-known for their crimes? And the answer is simple, I have, right? I've been locked up with a lot of people. I don't know the details into their crimes too much. I never paid attention to all that. I was more aware of what was going on around me and who I was kicking back with, what I was doing, rather than what a particular individual was in for. But there were just some of those guys that didn't matter who they were because of their size, stature, the nature of their crimes. We all knew exactly who that individual was. Well, I've done time out of state. I've done time in 3 different states. And that's just the road I was on, man. I was messing up wherever I went. I would try to move to change my life. I think that's the story of all our lives. We move to try to change our life. I thought that was the recipe for me. I thought if I got away from the homies, if I got away from the vodka, if I got away from, the bad influences, that I would change magically and all of a sudden become a new person and do good and get a good job. But then I realized I was the bad influence. Maybe I was the one that had the wrong, flawed ways of thinking, that everywhere I went, I took it with me, and I simply wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to change. And that's how it is, man. You're only ready to change when either 2 things happens. Either you, and here's some knowledge you can't get in college. Either you hit rock bottom or you just get tired and say, you know what? I'm done. I'm done, man. I'm going to do something different in my life. I'm tired of living hard and rough. Because when you're out there running amok and when you're out there acting a fool, right? And gang banging and being involved in drugs or selling drugs or whatever you're doing, whatever you are involved in that lifestyle, in that life, it's a rough life. It's a hard life. You might not think it at the time, but when you reflect back later on in reflection, you're like, wow, I was living rough. It was hard. And I guarantee you, here's a challenge. Nobody has anything to show for their past and what they were, when they were grinding and they were selling dope and they were out there hustling. You don't have anything to show for it. You might have some scars. You might have some paperwork that says you did a whole lot of time. But as far as anything that you gained in a positive fashion, right, other than knowledge, man, you don't have nothing else. That's just the way life is. I know I've been through it. Several people around me have been through it. Anyways, so in this particular time I went out of state, I was in the state of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. I keep it West Coast fashion. And I got caught up. I got caught up like anyone else does, and I did some prison time. Now, it's not a very big system. And I think JD DeLay, if you go tap in with JD DeLay, man, he's been in that system. He's been on a lot of the same yards that I was on. So we know a lot of the same people, but even more so than that, just a lot of the same get down, okay? So the system is much different. I can only compare it to more of the Wild Wild West scene, where it's not prison organizations running the system. More so it's just little gangs and little groups of guys that decide to be involved in that, running the system, and then you have a mixture of everybody else. So you're going to have your serial killers, your pedophiles, your chomos. They're all going to be on that yard. There's no question about it. If you go looking and seeking and searching for these type of individuals, they're going to be there. It's a small system. They're not separating people, putting people in protective custodies, SNY yards. They're not doing any of that. They're throwing everybody, general population, non-general population, or whatever, on the yards together and let you figure it out. Now, you would think that's the perfect recipe for disaster. There's going to be a lot of killings, a lot of murders. And quietly as it's kept, it's not. Because the administration, the CEOs, everyone else caters to these type of individuals. They cater to the pedophiles. They cater to these weirdos with the weird charges. It just is what it is. You're getting told on right when you walk through a building, right when you walk into a building, if you have a look to you or people are intimidated, they're dropping a kite on you immediately. It's just the way it is. Hey, I've seen people, myself included, get bounced around from building to building, prison to prison, just based off kites, just based off someone saying, nope, this motherfucker got way too many tattoos. He got to go. Now, there are instances where you do get individuals that have influence from out of state, or even the guys that are homegrown right there that just ain't going to have it, man. They be chomo hunting in there. They be extorting, beating them up. Just is what it is. No matter where they go, they're never going to be safe. It's not like this system is built for their comfort, but it is definitely built to treat everybody like shit. Case in point, man, Keith Jesperson. So I was in a prison called OSP, the Oregon State Penitentiary. It's one of the oldest prisons on the West Coast. It reminds me of San Quentin or Folsom. It's to that caliber. It's actually a penitentiary. Okay, a penitentiary compared to an institution is surrounded by fences. Okay, fences, razor wire, electric fence. That's an institution or a prison. A penitentiary is surrounded by walls. Shawshank Redemption. Old school shit. Old Folsom. Okay? San Quentin. These prisons that are surrounded by walls, they're old. You can see the outside of the walls leaking a brown substance. I don't know what it is. The type of prison when you pull up, all the guards are waiting there with their batons and their sunglasses on, and they're like, welcome home. Because you ain't going nowhere, punk. Right? It's different. Rolling up to that place, I could feel a sense of a loss, all the loss that's been there. People that have been there for a long time. That prison, if you want to get an actual factual inside look to that prison, it's a little bit different. There's a movie with, I think it was Billy Ray, I was about to say Billy Ray Cyrus. His daughter's a fucking whore. Nah, I just kidding. Hey, fucking, I forget his name. Anyways, I know it's Bruce Willis and Billy Ray Thornton. If you go watch the movie Bandits, it was filmed. There's an escape scene that was filmed actually in that penitentiary around the same time I was locked up there, right? True story. So you have to trip out on that. You'll see that prison, there's an old school mentality there. Most guys that are there have been there for a while. They ain't going anywhere for a while. And this is the place where Oregon it's supposed to be a max security place. So this is one of the places where they keep some of the more well-known figures that are locked up. Some of the more heinous crimes, some of the most notorious crimes. It just is what it is. But of course, you got your mix of people. Now, they do have custody levels, whereas in California, there's going to be custody levels like level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 4 being the max. Over there, they have such things as max custody, closed custody, minimum and medium custody. Okay, so there's not too many prisons, like I said, in that system. But if you're on minimum custody, you're going to go to more like a fire camp. One of the prisons where you're going to be out there fighting fires and catching trout and getting bush visits, right? Then, of course, if you're stepping your game up, if you're a medium custody, you're going to be behind some gates, but maybe not necessarily within that real prison wall. They have little camps or little facilities and buildings outside of the gates. They give you a little bit more incentive, I guess. There's always a lot of people with dope charges, and these are the guys that come in and out, in and out, in and out. It seems like they're trying to help them, but at the same time, they're just giving these guys too much comforts. And so they're coming back. Prison ain't shit to them. And then, of course, you have your closed and your max custody, and these are the guys that are doing time. Okay, one thing about the Oregon State, the system, is they have different laws. Every state has different laws. In California, you have the notorious 3 strikes law. Okay, 3 strikes and you're out. And I remember it was such a big deal when it happened because guys were freaking out because you were hearing horror stories about guys catching a burglary or guys stealing candy bars at fucking Lucky's or guys in Kmart in the aisle 9 at the aisle 9 special when they weren't supposed to be there, right, doing their thing. And then catching that 3rd charge, that career criminal or whatever, that 3rd strike. And then it was a wrap. They were catching 25 to life for frivolous shit. But of course, from the society standpoint, they had given you too many chances already. You went up to bat and you struck out. Okay, so it was done. Now, there's a lot of people getting get-backs on appeals. And hopefully that bill one of these days does overturn because it affected some of the people that didn't deserve, to get that much time for some of the crimes they did. But hey, if you're living that life, what do you expect? They're only going to get harsher on crime. That just is what it is. It's never going to get better. It's always going to get worse. Okay? Some people say it gets worse before it gets better, and sometimes it just never gets better. It just stays worse. So when you're living that life, you have to understand that you're taking a chance with your life, ultimately. You might be out there messing with other people's lives, but at the same time, your life is hanging in the balance as well. You better get your shit together. So in Oregon, they have a law that they passed called Measure 11, which is basically a one and done type law, right? It's a mandatory minimum. Mandatory minimum means that there's certain criterion for these crimes that you do. If you touch someone, if you assault someone, right? put hands on someone, go to a bar, sock someone up, you can quite possibly catch the measure 11. Quite possibly, right? If they decide to charge you with it. I've seen people charged with it, some people not. Just is what it is. If they decide to ultimately charge you with it, there's certain, like I said, mandatory minimum sentences, 60 months, 70 months, 90 months. And that's day for day. Day for day meaning you're doing every damn day of it. There is no 85%. There's no 80%. There is no halftime. It's not do one day, get a day knocked off your sentence. You're doing every single bit of that, what they've given you. And they like to dress it up and clean it up. Oh, you got 70 months. But really do the calculation on how long 70 months is, because you went into a bar and headbutted someone on accident. Okay? They'll stretch you. So anyways, back to Keith Jesperson. So this guy was well known in, I think it was the 80s or the 90s. People didn't know who the fuck he was, right? But he became well known. This guy was a truck driver, grew up kind of odd, but in a regular type family. And according to everything I've seen on him, and I didn't do the homework on him until I got out of prison, because I didn't know who I was amongst. I was around a few different type of people considered serial killers. And I kind of would just look at them and want to see the weirdness and what they got going on. Some people you can tell, some people you can't. With this guy, you could definitely tell he was odd, right? Walking around that yard, he's a very tall guy, 6'7". So he stands out amongst people. And I remember he was a real good artist on the yard, if I recall, man, a very good artist. And people used to be like, hey, that's the happy face killer. Okay, well, let me tell you how he got that name and how he became a notorious known serial killer. And the story's kind of crazy, right? And then I could tell you about doing time amongst him. So this guy was unaliving women up and down the I-5, up and down whatever highway it was in the Pacific Northwest, right? He had a double life. It's what a lot of these guys do. He had a family at home, and he would go out on this road, and there was something about the power over women, man, that he enjoyed. There was something about doing what he does. These guys are sick mentally. They're not all there. So I can't sit here and tell you exactly what goes through their mind, what they're doing. All I can do is equate it to like my past addiction with the casino, right? Whereas it became not about the money anymore, but more about the thrill of the win. It's kind of like a man with a woman. You could be all night long at the club or wherever you're at, trying to get at a chick, trying to pop, right? And then you get at her, she's feeling you, you kick it, and then you handle your business. If you're anything like me, you handle it immediately, right? And after you handle your business, you roll over like, I'm trying to get the fuck up out of here. You know what I mean? Get your arm off me, Coyote Ugly, right? That's the thrill of the hunt. Okay, you're more thrilled in investing in the hunt rather than the outcome of it. And then when it happens, it's not that impressive. It's like, okay, I'm ready to go to the next one. That's how I believe serial killers work. That's how I think they react to certain things. It's all about that thrill of the hunt, and they can't get enough of the end game. It's not impressive enough. Enough is not enough, right? But this is different. See, it's different of going to a casino, putting a little money and losing, or it's different of having, a good time with the chick, because you ain't broke no laws. You ain't did nothing bad to anyone. I mean, you might hurt someone's feelings, but at the end of the day, she's going to meet the next dude, and there's going to be some brother there that's going to make her the happy woman, right? So my thing is this guy was one of those individuals. And that's, like I said, that's the only way I could explain it. But anyways, he was unaliving a lot of women. Well, in his case, I'm not sure of exactly how many women they've said that this guy unalived, but I do know he was only sentenced for a certain amount. But a lot of people have alleged it could be well over 100, right? With these guys, you never know. Some of these crimes are so similar in nature that they get blamed for ones they didn't do, while someone else gets blamed for ones they did, and they just throw them all together in a pot and think, hey, they got the right person for whatever. It is what it is. So one of this guy's cases, there's evidence left behind or whatever. They find the body, and they start to do an investigation. And there was an older woman, okay? Again, for what she did, you could tell she had some screws loose. She was having some conflict with her younger boyfriend at the time. They looked, they were old white folks. Brother, give me a shot of coffee. They looked like odd people. Okay, I'll just say that. Look into the documentary. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about if you want to do your homework and fact check it, right? But she just looked odd. And the type of guy she was with, he just looked like a dolphin that was utilizing her social security check. She looked like she was willing to do anything for this man who she knew who didn't want to be with her for the right reasons. But whatever, people have relationships like that. You know, so one person's side is financial, the other person's side is trophy wife, right? It just be like that. So she was nothing like a trophy wife, okay? But she had a trophy husband, she believed. So they had been having problems and they got into a fight. Now, this crime that had been committed was out there. People were looking for whoever had unalived this woman. And she decided to call into the local police because she was upset and angry with her boyfriend. I don't know if he left her. And she wanted to take the rap. She was so mad. And that's why you don't mess with women, man. You don't mess with their emotions. She was so upset that she called in to the authorities and admitted guilt and blamed her boyfriend and said it was us. We did it. Now, she knew certain details of the crime because she had seen it on the news. Some of the news, different news speak on things differently. And one of the news places had slipped a little bit, gave a little bit too much information. So she was able to get that information, convince a detective that she was guilty and her boyfriend was guilty. And they ultimately went through trial and got found guilty and got life in prison for this, right? Now, one thing about a serial killer is they do not appreciate other people claiming their kills. They don't appreciate other people getting that glory. To them, you're stealing a piece of them that they enjoyed, right? You're stealing a piece of their resume. Keith Jesperson was that way, right? So because he's seen this, that these people were convicted, and that was pretty much it. It was that, they isolated that crime. These people admitted it. Craziness, right? So what he started to do is he started to stop at these local rest stops and these bathrooms, and he would leave notes signed in happy faces, basically admitting guilt to certain murders that were happening and giving detail that no one else in the public would know. Okay, he wrote letters into the newspapers doing the same thing. Of course, this alerted the authorities, and ultimately they realized these people are full of shit. The killer's still out there, right? And because of his pattern and the way where he would stop, they automatically knew. Investigators are smart. You can't get away with shit. Not back then, not especially right now with all these cameras and ring cameras and all that. Murder, you got to shave your full body, man, and you can't lick your lips like Mr. Criminal or do nothing, because any drip of saliva comes out, it's a wrap, right? DNA will get you. If it got you, it gets you. So this individual didn't care, man. It was like he was baiting the authorities to get him. He wanted to be convicted of his crimes, right? So what they did was they realized that he was still out there. Eventually they caught up to him. He was arrested. His family was shocked. They were shocked on the size of this guy. Very big man, 260, 70 pounds, 6'5", all the way to 6'7". I mean, some people say 6'5". I say 6'7". I've been right there next to him in the chow hall. He's a big boy, right? I'll tell you that much. They overturned the charges on these two people. They were released. This guy was found to be guilty of all these crimes. Right now, like I said, he's never been convicted of every single crime he's ever done. They only got you on so much, but they got him. They had the right guy. So this guy's locked up in prison doing a life bid, right? And seeing him function on the yard for the first time, what stood out to me was, oh, whoa, that's a big old white man right there, right? Right off the top. Very quiet, very humbled. Doesn't cause problems, right? Doesn't get extorted or punked like you think he would. You know, he's a very big and a dangerous individual. He looks like the type that has two styles about himself. Like I said, very quiet. He's always doing artwork, sticks to himself on the yard, doesn't come out of his cell very much. When he is out there, though, no one approaches him. No one messes with him. I don't know if it's fear of his size or more so people just don't. They just don't, right? I never had an issue with this guy other than he was a weirdo and he was in on weird charges, and I kept my distance from these guys. You know, I tried not to get in that, around that area or in that mix, and I could tell these guys. And that's why I tell that joke about these motherfuckers playing Dungeons and Dragons and kicking back and playing, you know what I mean, fucking Mother May I and all these weird charges that they play, or games that they play with these weirdo charges. You could tell. Okay, you could tell. You can't judge a book by its cover, but you could tell these weirdos. They all hang out together, sucking on thumbs together. It just is what it is, right? Now, like I said, I did time with this guy, but it was like him not even being there. You know, he had a little bit of juice with the cops, I guess, because of his crime or just because of the nature of the man that he was. He had a nice little job there, yard crew type shit, and was doing his thing. Now, I'll tell you this right now. These guys right here, there's something mentally wrong with them. okay? And I think it's a switch that they could turn on and off, and then eventually it gets stuck and they can't turn it off, right? But for all the crimes that he did, and then he gets locked up and catches life, he seemed very happy to be in prison. He seemed like he was walking around that yard like he would just, this is just my home and this is what it is, right? And that type of mental capacity, you know, like that, that's the type of person you don't want to be around. It's emptiness there. There's nothing to gain from that. This guy was perfectly content in what he did and understood ultimately he needed to be away from society. And I think that's why he admitted his guilt. Not only did he want to be charged for his crimes and get the credit for it, but these guys also they also cry out for help. Now I want to talk about another, there's been a few serial killers I've been around, but I'm going to tell you just a quick one. There was a youngster that comes into the unit, right? The building. And the homeboy was like, hey, you know who that guy is? A little short, fat, white guy. And I was like, Wood, brother? You know, he was like, oh yeah, that too. But, and this is like, would trip you out, right? He was like, yeah, that's one of the thrill killers. And I was like, who's that? And this was in the same system. And I guess these guys were going along the Oregon coast, man, you know, where the ocean's at, the beach. And they were actually sniping couples that were walking down. There was two of them, 2 or 3 guys that were doing it. And they called them the thrill killers because they were doing it for a thrill. And to me, he didn't look like he was no thrill killer. He didn't look like a killer at all. He looked like a guy that if I walked up and I took his bologna sandwich from him, he'd just cry and drop a kite on me, right? But it's crazy the type of people that do the type of things they do, and then you run into them in prison and you realize, man, there's a pecking order in prison. Prison's a lot different than you would think. You know, some of those hardest criminals that you see on the streets that you wouldn't even go around because, man, that guy's nuts. He's in prison fucking sucking chorra. Some of the ones that you think, this guy wouldn't kill a fly, man. He's in there stabbing some shit. It's just the way, it's the way prison is. Anyway, Keith Jesperson, he was out there murking everything in sight. Women, prostitutes, all that. That's what his MO was, right? And in prison, he's doing a whole lot of nothing. Again, that's just the way that system is. They mix everyone together. Now, I don't know if he's still in Oregon State Prison or if they've moved him. But that's where he was when I happened to see him, you know. And there's a lot of people in my whole time being locked up in every state, whether it be Washington, Oregon, California. I've ran into people that are well known. You know, I've ran into rappers and not necessarily social media people because at that time there wasn't really that. But I've ran into actors, B-actors, singers, comedians. You know, I actually had a cellie one time and trip out. So I go into a cell. And this cellie was an old school black dude. Man, he was a G, right? That fool had a bone crusher on him like that. No, Wes Watson, he didn't put it in his asshole, right? I don't know where he put it, but I know that motherfucker looked like it had a deer antler at the end of it. It was vicious, right? I was like, damn, I ain't never seen a brother with a piece like that. He was old school. He was kicking back. And I remember one day, you know, he was my cellie. And they did sell Northerners up with blacks in them times, right? And so we're celled up, but we're trying to move cells because I'm trying to get with the homeboy from my county, and he's trying to get another brother in there from Oakland, right? He was a Oakland native, OG Oakland unaffiliated, right? And he's singing one day, "You're still a young man," and I'm like, damn, this motherfucker sings good, right? And I'm like, hey, bro, you can blow, man. That shit's tight. And then we start to talk about his history and his life and what he's locked up for. And do you know that this guy was once the lead singer of Tower of Power? Yes, the group Tower of Power. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's that song, You're Still a Young Man. That was my cellie for a quick minute. I couldn't believe it. He was doing life for killing his old lady. I was like, fuck, right? It's a trick. Can I get your autograph, brother? Right? Good dude right there. Solid. Stone cold killer. Don't mess with him. Anyways, with that being said, that's pretty much all I have to say about Keith Jesperson. For the person that asked me the question, yeah, I did time with him. Didn't really pay attention to him too much because, again, man, if any of those weirdos would have came around me, man, it would have been issues and problems. I tried to stay away from that. I had a few little homeboys that I just stick with. Plus, man, being a northerner in that system, we didn't have numbers at all. There were some prisons we couldn't go to where it was on site, so we didn't have time to worry about chomos and weirdos. We were in there fighting for our lives, too. That's the cool part about life, right? Where you have chomos and pedophiles and weirdos on yards, functioning, kicking it, eating spreads, no one tripping on them. Right? But if a Norteño got to the yard, we were on site. It was mandatory rush right off the top. Crazy world now. With that being said, I hope that you move smooth with a purpose. Get everything that you want coming. And remember, at the end of the day, it's all about the strive, the struggle, the struggle, the strive. I'm going to continue to give you the knowledge you can't get in college. Continue to entertain you right here on YouTube. But with a message. And the message is, man, jail ain't smooth. Prison ain't no punk, right? You don't want to go in there and think that, oh, it's all good, man. This is just part of it, right? Because you're just beginning, homie. It gets ugly. The gun.